Well, hello my friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my channel and another video using one of the STAMPtember limited edition exclusive collaborations. Today's collab is with Whimsy Stamps, and like all of the other collaborations, these are one and done. When they sell out, they are not restocked. That said, I always link to the brand as well, so I have a link to all the Whimsy Stamp products at Simon Says Stamp. Worth checking out, especially if you're a Halloween fan. They go all out with the Halloween products. Love it. So this is the Basically Boo set, and you've got several graphic Boo images. I used 2 of them. There's another one, and then there's a few little like kind of buildable sentiments. And there's even one that says, like, it just has GER. And for a second, I was like, what? So you can spell booger? I don't know why I laughed. I was like, I know some little people in my life that would just find that endlessly entertaining, you know? So, options. Anyway, I stamped some of the images onto distress watercolor paper. And I used Simon's new black ink. So I stamped them, and then I'm doing super simple watercoloring using some distress oxides. You could use anything, whatever floats your boat. I was in an oxide mood when I was doing this, and if you have oxides and you've never watercolored at all, highly recommend you try it. Because not only do oxides, like, they blend beautifully, you can do all the things with them, but watercoloring with them is very easy. And as Tim Holtz says, you know, they're creamy, dreamy. And they really are. And I just used my little water brush and I smushed my oxide ink pads just onto my little palette here. Barely smushed anything because we're not doing a whole lot of coloring. And I just picked up color and painted with it. So I started with Lost Shadow. That's what I used on the little ghosties. And then Carved Pumpkin. You could totally amp this up, you know, and layer on more colors, do all the things. I kept this pretty simple, you know. I'm pumping out videos like a crazy person, so I kept my coloring very simple. I used gathered twigs for the little stems there. And then I'm going to use a tiny bit of mustard seed for the little stars on that little graphic O, as well as some picked raspberry, because why not? And then peacock feathers, which definitely is one of my favorite colors. Anytime anyone asks me about favorites, I always like, no, I don't have favorites of anything. It's like asking me to, you know, name a favorite child. But I've noticed I reach for peacock feathers a lot. So it's definitely up there, but it also depends on my mood. But yeah, I use peacock feathers. And then I decided to mix the peacock feathers with the Lost Shadow. Because, like, I was like, I'm not doing any layering or anything crazy. I mixed it, and then I added that to my little ghost. Just because. Just that little hint. You know, mixing peacock feathers with Lost Shadow creates almost like an icy blue sort of color. I kind of like it. So, painted that on there. Added the teeniest bit onto that large web. And I did add a tiny bit more of the carved pumpkin to these pumpkins. Just that extra little bit, you know. And then a little bit of that peacock feathers onto the web of this bee. I really like that. I like sentiments like that. And then when I was done, I die cut everything. I'd stamped the spider multiple times just to have some extras. And I'd also stamped the to you little buildable phrase and die cut that as well. And then set those aside. And then to build my background, I took more of the distress watercolor paper, and this is the Droopy Web 3D embossing folder from Simon Says Stamp, and I ran that through my machine to get this fabulous web background. I was like, we got little spiders in the set, let's do a spider web background. So I embossed these panels with that, and then I took those same distress oxide inks and a blending brush. I started with carved pumpkin. Just the way this web is shaped, it kind of seems to like highlight from the center. So I took my blending brushes and starting from the center, just kind of started blending it out in sort of a circular motion. and I wasn't adding very much ink. You can easily like do solid blending with oxides, you know, and like they blend beautifully, like all the things. I love my oxides. I purposely went kind of lighter and a little bit messier. They're Halloween cards. They don't need to be perfect. And I was also liking, of course, how the raised edges of the embossing were picking up that ink as well. So I started with carved pumpkin, and then I went into peacock feathers. And normally this is a blend that could get muddy, you know, an orange into a bluey green like this. However, again, Halloween, not too worried if, you know, mud gets created. And we're going to be adding, you know, splatter and all the things, so not that big of a deal. So I did the same thing. I was kind of, you know, going in that sort of circular motion, dragging the brush more than trying to blend it. It was more just to get that ink down and not adding like solid color. Just intentionally messy. That's another reason why I love making Halloween cards so much, is you can just be messy on purpose. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's fun. It's fun. So blended that around, and then I wiped down, like, because my desk is, or my like work surface is glass, I wiped down the ink. Normally I wouldn't care, but with oxides and the way the pigments work, I didn't want to get those colors like all in my brush for the black as well as into my black soot ink pad. So yeah, black soot oxide and a light hand. If you've ever worked with black soot, you know it is super pigmented. It can go very solid black very quickly, which is awesome, but I didn't want that. You know, I wanted this sort of messy, lighter sort of look. So I just used a really light hand, blended that on, and then I ended up deciding to just lightly go over like the entire thing. Because again, just, and black soot oxide especially, there's something about it. It is like, yeah, I don't even know. Every time I start pulling out my oxides again, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like these inks. I need to use them more. So anyway, whatever was left on my brush, I kind of swirled it over everything else, just messed, you know, added that bit of like soot, you know. And then I actually decided to take the ink pad directly to this background and not really pressing the ink pad, so it picks up more on all those raised embossed edges. So went around and just did that, you know, and it just made everything kind of pop a little bit more. And then, because these are oxides and they're very water reactive, I can take my spray bottle and I hold it like a couple feet above. And this is the distress spray bottle, so if you only press the nozzle halfway, you get more splotches versus just spray. So do that, press some paper towel into it, and you get those inky, splotchy. Love it. Love it. So after I did that, I let them dry. I trimmed these down to about 4 by 5¼ inches, just slightly smaller than an A2 card base. And then once I had these trimmed down, I also decided to die cut some additional sentiments. So I'm using the new EZ Strip Halloween sentiments as well as the new EZ Strips banners wafer die. Because there's the original EZ Strips that just cut like rectangular banners, and then in the release on the first, Simon released these EZ Strips banners. Love. So it's one wafer die, die cuts everything. There's a whole bunch of coordinating like stamp sets and sentiments. Anything that says EZ Strips in the Simon Says Stamp store coordinates with these. So I ran that through, and now I have a whole bunch of die cut sentiments. So I picked out the ones I wanted, and the rest I just put back in the packaging to use next time. And then I put Big Mama foam tape on the back of everything. So I just did that off camera because you guys didn't need to sit and watch me apply foam tape to everything. So I popped that on there to pop all these onto these card fronts. So it just, you know, bumps them up a bit, gives them a little bit of extra dimension. And yeah, I just built these fun little scenes with these sentiments and the little spiders and the little ghosties and then the little extra sentiment strips. So once I get these popped into place, like I said, we're going to do splatter. And what you could do, because I didn't mask anything, but if that really bothers you, I would do all the splattering and all the things before adding all of these images. I was fine with it, but, you know, options. So I adhered all my bits, and then I had die cut some of Simon's Peacock cardstock with, yet again, the largest of the A2 Postage Rectangles wafer dies. I don't even bother putting this die set away. I've been using it constantly. I just I really like that edge, that like postage, you know, edge. It's so good. So I die cut that from the cardstock and then just glued these panels to it. My card bases are top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And on the insides of the cards, I've got one of the little sentiment strips from that Halloween EZ Strips pack. And then I stamped those little ghosties with the black ink. I'm going to stamp the little spiders as well. They're going to kind of be sitting on top of those sentiment strips. And then the little bats, those are from that Whimsy Stampptember collab from the Basically Boo set. I stamped those with the Peacock feathers and carved pumpkin Oxide inks just to pull those colors onto the inside as well. So after everything was stamped, I just adhered those little sentiment strips and then adhered the card fronts to the card bases. And then I'm going to add splatter. So like I said, you could add the splatter and then add the images. Like, or you could mask off specifically like the sentiment strips or whatever with like scraps of paper, you know, or skip the splatter completely. It's not for everyone. I get it. But I'm obsessed. I can't help myself, especially with Halloween cards. So I'm going to add white and black splatter. So put these into my splat box, put my white gouache on my palette, watered it down a little bit, and then added a decent amount of splatter. And I wasn't worrying. Like, I sort of avoided it. I've mentioned this in other videos. You know, I'm basically a splatter expert. You can, the more you get used to it, you can somewhat control it, but at the same time, you can't. It's got a mind of its own. It goes everywhere. I have it all over me and my work surface, even with the splat box. It is what it is. So when I'm very concerned, I do mask off certain things, but these are Halloween cards and they're fun. And the more splatter, the better. So after I did the white splatter, I added the black gouache to my palette, watered that down as well, and then added a decent amount of that to both of these cards. And it just works. It just works. So once I'd added the splatter and I managed, and for whatever reason, like these cards are closed, I still managed to get black splatter on the inside of one of the cards. This is like, you can't control it. You kind of can, but also you can't. I still don't know how that even happened, and I'll show it at the end. It just made me laugh. So added the splatter, let that dry. And then my final little embellishment is these little white clay hearts because they're cute. And they were sitting right beside me. And I was like, hey, these will work. So stuck a few of those onto each of these cards. And then once I was kind of happy with where I'd placed them, I can just pick them up with my embellishment wand and adhere them into place with little dabs of glue, just like so. And then all I got to do is let the glue dry and these cards are complete. So like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to all of the things in the description box below the video. So you can just expand that and check that out if you are interested. This is the one that has splatter on the inside. Like, seriously. Right along the bottom. Like, no idea how that happened, but whatever. So anyway, links to all the things are below. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me. At the very end, I'll link to my Halloween playlist as well. Thumbs upping and commenting, very much appreciated. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!